Warning, this may be the grossest list on YouTube. Today we're talking about the grossest, the goriest horror movies ever. And I like to get straight to it, so I'm not going to waste your time today. If you want to read any disclaimers about this list, check below in the comments and see the pinned comment. Huge shout out to my patrons and Instagram followers for helping me with this list. I don't know if I should be thanking you. Some of you are grosser than I am. And of course, mug of choice today is my very own human centipede one. My Live, Laugh, Love centipede. If you want to get this mug, you can get it from my store. I love giving this out when people come to my house and ask for a cup of tea. Or it's great in the office. Let's start somewhere kind of wholesome. Society is a cult classic, and from the opening sequence, it becomes apparent that this is not a film for the easily disgusted. This movie is a satire about suburban upper middle class as we follow a teenager who discovers that his family is part of a gruesome orgy cult for the social elite. The movie has some mind-bending body gore that is out of this world. One of the better low-budget horrors I always find myself referring back to, It is the story of a struggling actress in LA. But after years of rejection, she finally finds some comfort in self-harm. This begins an addiction with picking at her own body, and I'm sure you can guess by the title what comes next. It feels like a sister to the movie Starry Eyes, but instead of an obsession to impress others and for fame, we watch the lead take an introspective journey to find herself. And she does. The title is a hint to what's coming for this French coming-of-age film directed by Julia Ducournau. In Raw, we follow a vegetarian who has arrived at veterinary school, and it's one that's heavy on hazing. And the pressure caused by her peers alongside of being away from home for the first time begins to shock her system, which awakens a craving of the taboo kind. It's a well-constructed film that doesn't hold back. I would say it's the dark side of coming into your own. In My Skin is a French film that details the downward mental spiral of a woman who becomes addicted to self-inflicted pain. I feel like these films on this side of the scale share a taboo nature, a theme if you will. I think this one would be a really good double feature with Eat. The film is a bloody mess and it's totally vulnerable. It will have you squirming in your seat for the entire 93-minute runtime because you know exactly what's coming and there's nothing you can do but stick it out. It's a simple story, but very effective. Well, at least we have one fun horror on this list. The rest are a bit deep. But Dead Alive, also known as Braindead, is sick in a wholesome way because in New Zealand, anything is possible. Directed by Peter Jackson, the comedy fantasy horror follows a man who's trying to find balance in his life that's run by his overbearing mother. But when she's bitten by a rat monkey, things spiral out of control quickly. The film is known for its crazy practical effects and messy liquids, let's say that. It's a wacky ride and it's definitely worth the hype. I love this film. If you haven't heard or seen the special, you're gonna really hate me after you watch it. It's a truly sick idea that you won't be able to unsee. With the tagline, "This is not a love story," this indie gem follows a man who's introduced to a brothel by his friend. But it's not like any brothel. In the back room is a special deal, one that will change his life forever. This is the most bizarrely uncomfortable yet intriguing film, and I feel like people who have witnessed the entirety of this film should get one of those shirts, like I saw the special and all I got was this shirt. It's like that. Obviously I'm keeping it vague because I want to spare you spoilers, but you need to find out what's in that box. French horror film Inside is the terrifying story of a heavenly pregnant woman who encounters a stranger at her doorstep, demanding her unborn baby. Yes, you heard me correctly. The film mixes home invasion with a mother's worst nightmare. It's a bloody ride full of sharp objects, so be warned. When you think of this next title, what comes to mind? Hostel. For me, it's torture porn. The Eli Roth horror is every tourist's worst nightmare as we follow 3 American backpackers who are traveling through Eastern Europe. They find a hostel that others have painted as heaven, but after they check in, they find hell. The film has a lot of torturous scenes that viewers tend to find excruciating. Number 2 is also a great watch, if you can call it that. Tokyo Gore Police is literally described as a splatter film, so I had to include it on this list. It's known for its gore gory, perverse, and bizarre content. Set in the future, the film follows a woman who tracks down her father's killer while battling against mutant rebels known as engineers. The movie feels theatrical and over the top, but it does result in a majority practical effects, even though they're extremely cartoonish. It's an interesting ride, to say the least. High Tension, also known as Switchblade Romance in the UK, is a 2003 French slasher. The plot follows two friends who drive out to a secluded farmhouse to study, but a home invasion turns their plans bloody, and it gets really graphic. There's a lot of interesting moments in this film that have a lot of people conflicted about the messaging of the film and the reveals, but on top of that, it's one of the most bloody and gory French films out there. Of course, we had to mention the Evil Dead remake. This went all out with 70,000 gallons of fake blood, with 50,000 being used in the last scene, the epic final scene alone, which is a lot when you compare it to the 200 to 300 gallons used in the original film. They had to shoot this one in chronological order to keep the continuity, because once that blood is on the walls, there's no turning back. The film follows 5 friends who head to a remote cabin where they discover the Book of the Dead, which summons a demon living nearby. I have done a whole video on the original Japanese Guinea Pig series. There are 6 films, and they are based on the concept by Japanese manga artist Hideshi Hino, and so they work as loose adaptations. The theme across the board is depraved gore and torture. The first episode being The Devil's Experiment, which is by far the worst, or most depraved and most gruesome in the series. The film follows a group of men who kidnap and torture a young woman in unspeakable ways. The films get more and more theatrical as they go, but the first one is the most intense of the series, although the second one, Flower of Flesh and Blood, had Charlie Sheen believing it was real, allegedly. That's the rumor. I'm sure you've heard about that before. There was a film that was super gory from Japan that Charlie Sheen got a bootleg of and thought it was a real snuff film. And he actually called the FBI. So I mean, that's a whole different story, I guess. But the Guinea Pig series definitely gets up there for being one of the most depraved, gruesome things I've ever witnessed. And I don't need to watch that again. But it definitely deserves to be on this list. You can tell we're getting to the dark side of the list. We started a little bit brighter. Terrifier of 2 lands on this list due to its intense, detailed, practical gore. The film follows villain Art the Clown, who targets a family and begins to literally tear their world apart limb by limb. I wish I could show you more, but it is YouTube, so I'm trying to cut around stuff. The slasher is directed by Damien Leone, and it's praised for its practical gore, as Leone has an intensive background in makeup and special effects. The movie refused to cut any gore, and the rumors are they're doubling it for the next film in the franchise. I'm not going to take up 3 spots here talking about the Human Centipede films, but it does deserve them. I mean, it needs them. Think about all those extra arms and legs. The first Human Centipede is a deranged story about a German surgeon played by Dieter Laser, rest in peace, who kidnaps and tortures a trio of tourists by stitching them together as a mad experiment. The second film follows as an inspired by storyline, following Lona Martin, who attempts to recreate the original design. I personally think number 2 is the worst, the most depraved, and I actually interviewed the villain in this one, Lawrence R. Harvey. He is a sweetheart if you want to go check that out. He's not like he is in the character, so don't worry. And number 3 has to be the most wacky, as we follow the villains from the first 2 reimagined in a prison setting. In this one, the warden is looking to create the largest centipede ever out of prisoners. Tom Six is the sick mind behind all of these films. The idea for the original sequence came from a conversation Tom had with a bunch of his friends about what they could do to prisoners who committed horrendous crimes. Martyrs is a film known for both its psychological and physical torture. The film is a complete journey, but we start by following a young woman's quest for revenge against her kidnappers, who abused her as a child. The blood, torture, and pain starts early and moves throughout this film, varying in degrees and stages, with many shocking twists. If you have not seen Martyrs, it is a film you'll never forget, and honestly, it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's definitely top 10. Cannibal Holocaust is infamous for many reasons. The Italian found footage horror takes the viewer deep into the Amazon to follow an indigenous tribe who have cannibalistic tendencies. The film has some of the darkest moments in cinema, including assault and real animal death. It's infamous for a reason after all. The sadness, oh gosh, this Taiwanese film tested audiences around the world last year, and the hype was intense, and for a good reason. In this one, we follow a couple trying to survive when they're separated in a city ravaged by a plague that turns its victims into deranged, bloodthirsty sadists. The film has many gruesome scenes, each topping the last. Ichi the Killer is a fast-paced action horror. The movie is based on the manga series of the same name, and it uses intense gore and torture as its plot device, following a sadomasochistic Yakuza enforcer who meets his match when searching for his missing boss. And it's a man who's capable of the most depraved level of violence. I've already put a disclaimer for this video obviously down below, but I just want to say again, since we're on this side of the spectrum, honestly, it is shocking. Due to its graphic nature, this film is banned in several countries, and I do think that there's a few scenes in this movie that did not age well in terms of graphics, but the rest, yeah, it's hard to watch. It's a ride. Nekromantik is an infamous West German horror exploitation film. The film follows a deranged street sweeper who cleans up after grisly accidents. One day he brings home a full corpse for him and his wife to enjoy. The film has a surrealist-like nature which helps to soften some of the blow, but the director said in an interview that the film was purely made to rebel against the German film rating system, trying to shock as many people as possible, and watching it knowing that that's the intent explains some of the disturbing aspects, not all of them, but a lot. The film has many scenes of utter depravity and just plain torture, including the bunny scene, which for this film, I honestly, after it, even though it had a surrealist kind of edge, I had to look up a lot of the ways they put it together, how they made it, just to put myself at ease. And I would do the same if I was you, especially for the bunny scene. I feel like I have to keep warning you that this is really intense. I'm just waiting for the comments when people go and watch them and come back and freak out on me. So I've warned you, I can't do much more, I'm warning you. I was trying to keep as much kind of smutty films off this list. I wanted them to be at least watchable, but it's impossible to do a list on the most disgusting, gross horror movies and not include a smut at the top. And out of films like Bunny Game and Headless, which is disgusting, total gore, I settled on Flowers, which is an abstract surrealist horror film from 2015. The premise follows 6 women who wake up in their serial killer's house and attempt to make sense of their death, which involves crawling over dead bodies of other victims. It is a brutal viewing from start to end, but the lubricant scene, it will be forever stuck in my brain. And I think this is where we end. This is where I draw my line. I want to know where you draw yours. Let me know down in the comments where you draw your line. How disgusting do you get? I love a little bit of gore. I love a little bit of practical gore, but we all have limits. And I think it's the way they present the gore, obviously, as well, because films like Dead Alive can come across as super fun, but have as much gore as some really intense movies that use it in more of a realistic storyline. If you do like horror movies and thrillers and you're looking for a lot of recommendations, why not subscribe? I do new videos every single week giving you a lot of recommendations without spoilers. I let you know what you should watch. We also do some rankings, some deep dives, all that good stuff, so make sure you're subscribed. And also you might want to check out this video on more disturbing films. I do disturbing lists all the time. This is just one of my latest ones. I'll pin it in the comment down below. And I hope you're having a fantastic day. Stay safe and stay spooky. I'm gonna go have the longest shower and scrub my eyeballs out. Bye.